I'm David Mindell with PlantWise, an ecological restoration firm out of Ann Arbor, and we're getting ready to burn a 5-acre area right along the river here, between the park and the river. And the purpose of the burn is to eliminate as many of the eliminate as many of the invasive species as we can, to knock back some of the woody invaders that are coming in, to burn off the dead standing biomass, which will also allow the native plants to emerge. So it's kind of twofold, knocking back the invasives and stimulating native species.
Hi, I'm Mary Keck from the Clarkston News, and you're watching Seeing Green. Thanks for tuning in to ClarkstonTV.com. We've been hearing a lot about invasive species and controlled burns. There's one planned in Clarkston, and there are several being planned for Springfield Township. On April 2nd, there was a burn performed in Schultz Park in Springfield Township, and we're here at the Springfield Township Parks and Recreation Department today. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Tucker. She's going to talk to us about prescribed burns today. How you doing?
Good, good.
Welcome to Seeing Green.
Yeah, thanks for coming out yesterday.
Yeah, glad to be here. So there was lots of smoke, lots of fire. Talk to me about why prescribed burns are necessary and what they're all about.
Well, we have actually been burning since about 2005, and basically why we use that as a conservation tool is we have a lot of really high quality areas within our park system, and we have a very small staff. Okay. At the time we were looking into different ways that we could kind of harness or hold back some of the invasive species that we often talk about, autumn olive, black swallowwort. There's many on that list, but those kinds of invaders can come in and degrade this system pretty easily. So if we aren't mindful of that and don't act upon it, we would be letting the system go awry. Okay. So basically, one of the reasons why we use prescribed burn is there's a lot of things that it does for a location, depending on the ecosystem that you're dealing with. Ours are mostly wetlands along the Shiawassee rivers, often the area that we're treating. In particular, Schultz Park yesterday, that area had never been burned. It's along the Shiawassee River, and it had a lot of autumn olive in there that needed to be contained or knocked back. What our goals are depend on how we conduct the fire. And often in most of our areas, we conduct what you call a back burn, which is a slower, more contained fire that is, your flames aren't typically going to be hot, very high. And what we're trying to do is, if there is any critters out there, wildlife, they have time to get out of the way. This time of year, because of the temperatures, we wouldn't see very many turtles, snakes, frogs out yet. That's why we burn so early, to be able to avoid them altogether. Because when snakes do emerge, they move very slowly because they're still cold, and we don't want them to get caught in that in the crossfire, so to say. But typically, what we try to accomplish is knock back that brushy stuff, especially at the Schultz Park burn yesterday, and also have it increases the biodiversity. So there could be in the seed bank there seeds that have been laying in waiting for some kind of catalyst, and this fire could be it, to basically give a rebirth of that area. We've seen it in many other areas that will burn it, and all of a sudden we have lupin, which is a native fantastic purple flower. We'll have lady slipper, which is a rare orchid that will come about. So fire really as a tool can really be used in a lot of different ways depending on your conservation values.
That's interesting. I think most people think of fire as something really destructive, and they think of wildfires and
right.
Never start a forest fire, that kind of thing. And
right.
So how do you make sure that certain plants survive, and that the trees that are standing there in the fire, I mean, how is it that they can survive after that's happened?
Well, in any prescribed burn, we look at what our targets are, and then take certain things out. So say yesterday we had a couple large pine trees. And pines often are will catch fire easily when you could lose them because obviously the boughs are way out and then the fire could travel up the trunk. We will do burn breaks around those to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Okay.
But in other trees, typically what'll happen is nothing, really below about an inch in caliper, or above an inch in caliper will be phased by the fire. It's just not. It's not the blaze people think of when you think of fire. Typically, the flames are only about 18 inches, and really the only time I've ever seen particular trees, injured is when there was a lot of leaf splitter on the bottom, and that really heated up the root flares. Okay. But we're pretty mindful about those things, and know before we even go into a site, what our goals are. What we want to save, what we really don't want to save. So, so it's very targeted. Okay. Pretty concise.
So how do you ensure that it's a safe process? I think people might hear about a controlled burn in Schultz Park near where they live and think, oh my goodness, what if that fire ends up in my yard? How can you make sure that everybody's safe?
Well, what we do is, like I said, there's actually a burn prescription, kind of like you'd go to the doctor and they tell you what ails you and how to fix it. We do the same thing. Only ours has things like where we're going to put the burn breaks, in what manner these burn breaks will be put in, because often burn breaks can be anything from a charred area that is between where the fire is being conducted and, let's say, the road, or a green space, lawn, for example, at Schultz Park. At that burn, our other side of our burn break was actually the river, so it's going to stop at the water. Those kinds of things are measured out well in advance. Wind direction, very important, because depending on what way that wind's blowing is how the burn is going to go from start to finish. So those kinds of things that's obviously human safety is the first thing we worry about. And then, this is very we go over this with the fire department. Our fire department is really great to work with for prescribed burns and has been very supportive. Because really what the crux of it is if this caught fire when it wasn't being controlled, the fire could be a lot worse and a lot faster and uncontrollable. So to get those fuels to the point where they are manageable and not quite so heavy. Say the fire, especially by Schultz Park, the railroad goes right through there. Say if it would have sparked and lit that site on fire, chasing it is not easy. So it's easier to be there in control of it.
Okay. So it sounds like this is not the first time you guys have done a prescribed burn. This is something that you've been doing for a while. Maybe you can talk about what experiences you've had. I mean, are there times that have proven that getting rid of these invasive species has been a good tool?
Definitely. Our park system, we have a what we call the Long Lake Fen Complex, and it's a very high quality, pristine fen. It's actually the largest in Michigan, and Michigan has the most prairie fens, so you could really A plus B equals C. We really have the nicest fen in the world. So it's a pretty heavy burden, and also really neat. It's a when we want to be able to keep that intact for generations
what
to come.
What is a fen? Can you describe that for me real quick?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's okay, go ahead.
Fen is basically, it's kind of like what most people would call a marsh. Common, I would say that's a swamp. But basically what this is, it's always spring-fed, has a certain pH, about 7, always a pH level of about 7, springs flowing through it all the time, certain calcium levels, certain animals and wildlife and plants actually occur there. In places, so say you would dig that plant up and move it somewhere else, it's not going to survive. there's a lot of things that people would recognize, like for instance, cinquefoil is one of those things, and that's actually now a commercial hybrid plant, but it's naturally occurring in fens, and so it's a lot smaller and single stemmed, but similar. So it's a really unique community. Kind of also it's similar to a bog. People, when you are in one area and say you had someone with you and they jumped in the other, you could feel yourself move. I mean, it's quite amazing.
Wow.
So that's kind of a capsulized version of what a fen is.
Okay.
But it is, for us, it's really important that we do what we can to make sure that this system is intact for our next generations. So. But we've had a lot of success with prescribed burning. Like I said, we had started in 2005 and realized what a positive impact fire really can be. Things that weren't here for the 15 years I've been here suddenly appear, and so that they're basically wait for a catalyst. And I know that you had been out last summer, and we had the Minnesota Zoo out, and they actually collected post-chic skipper eggs from female, it's a female butterfly that is an endangered species, and they actually created a enclosure at their zoo to reintroduce this butterfly to their state, which is fantastic. And we have the highest count in the world right here in Springfield Township.
And you think, and the reason that the post-chic skipperling is succeeding is because of these controlled burns, you think?
I think it's a combination of things. I think that it's active management, and I think we're really for me it's a indicator that we're doing the right thing. If the year before we had 40, a count of 40, and after that we do a burn, and 2 years after that our counts are well into the hundreds. That's amazing. I mean, that's a success. So I think that those kind of indicators are telling us that we're doing the right thing. So we do other management methods as well, but in particular, prescribed burns hits a lot larger area in a shorter period of time, basically.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. I mean, why burn instead of, maybe mow or just cut down the particular plants that are the problem or something like that? We
actually do, when burning isn't possible, we will mow. But the difference is, when you mow, you're left with a lot of that litter that's left, in the biomass. So you want to eventually get rid of that. And what also will happen is the heat from the fire also will germinate seed. It regenerates forest floors. It will activate nutrients that are in the soil that may have had not been activated previously. For hundreds of years, a lot of Native Americans would burn their fields, and that was basically to regenerate them. So fire really does is a fantastic tool, used correctly. So there is ways you can use it incorrectly.
Okay.
So
now I understand that you've got about 225, 230 acres that you'll be burning.
Yep.
What's the next step once you've got all this burning finished? What's the next step for?
What we do is actually go through the site. We take benchmarking photos. So basically what that means is, say you have something fixed, a rock, a pole, some people will actually put, solid points in. You'll go out and take photos and see how the growth of the, bushes, shrubs, whatever might be there, how you've impacted them positively, negatively, and that's how we learn, In Schultz, I'm hoping to see a lot of those bushes wiped out, and they'll just degrade. We'll just let them degrade in that spot. But, and then, the other thing is it's the best litter picking mechanism ever because the place is clean, and now you go through and pick up the rest of the trash.
Okay.
There's also other things that we go through and assess where our invasive species are and what our priorities. So for instance, what we're gonna be burning today has Phragmite in it. Now, typically we would never burn this, but we are gonna burn this, and then our next step is in August when Phragmite, which is a aquatic plant, has a large plume on the top. Most folks are familiar, and once you see it everywhere. What we'll do is after that is burned, we'll come in August when it's all plumed out and flowered out on the top. We'll treat that with a herbicide, and it's kind of like a 1-2 punch. So we're going to get our best bang for our buck because we burned it, and then we're going to stress it again by, applying a herbicide. So hopefully we'll kind of knock that back.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you have a lot planned for
Yes,
Springfield
yes.
Township this year. Quite a few acres going to be burned.
Yes, yep.
Very
So-
exciting. Okay, well, thank you for talking with us. We're here at the Springfield Township Parks and Rec. My name's Mary Keck. You've been watching Seeing Green. We hope you'll get on to ClarkstonTV.com again and watch some more Seeing Green. Thanks.